if Sylva provides an energy efficiency framework, but all the vendors have their own different energy efficiency frameworks, then there is no incentive for them to use another one as well. So I would think carefully about which way around the incentives are flowing. If you make the vendors feel like they can influence the energy efficiency framework and make it work for them, that is a good reason for them to do it with Sylva and not on their own. And then when it comes to your point about on the end user side, as I say, a lot of telcos have already got investments with, infrastructure stacks around 5G and around software initiatives internally with containers as a service and platform. They really, really need a very strong reason to not continue doing that and to use Sylva. And I think making it extremely clear that the best way to be net zero fast across the industry is through Sylva is the right way to go. I know this is difficult, but if you don't have those incentives clearly laid out, it's unlikely that you'll get many users. So that I think is important. This is a great opportunity to make the industry first, open, energy efficient platform.
So Guilherme, you have some questions?
Yeah. It's not a question. It's also a comment. I do agree on these actual questions raised by Alexis and the different warnings. For me, what is important, and I think it's following your point, is that coming back to the basic, you mentioned the coming requirements concerning energy efficiency. I think definitely Sylva has to feed up with existing alliance, open source project, and so on. So, for example, there are many requirements on energy efficiency within ORAN alliance. So I don't know what about Anuket, but Gagali can tell us. I'm not sure there are many, but definitely we want in the reason why of Sylva it's to implement some existing requirements, but here it's really an implementation project. So yeah, just want to come back on this important point.
Okay, thank you, Guilherme. I think yeah, good point on that one also. So any other comments, feedback from users? Carlo or Rehab, your views?
No, I agree with Guillaume's comments that we should try to focus on to collect the work that has been done also in other places and try to understand if there is something that could be useful for an implementation inside Sylva.
Sure.
Do you at this point have a view on what the energy efficiency mechanisms are from a technical point of view that we want to consider in this work group? I mean, there are various ways you can approach energy efficiency, right? You can approach it from the viewpoint of using energy efficient hardware and using like purpose-built accelerators, for example, to bring energy consumption. You can think of it in terms of workload placement, like do I run things closer to the user? Do I run it further away? What are the mechanisms of potentially moving workloads across the network, across various cloud types in a distributed cloud setting? You can think of it as a observability or measurement challenge primarily, just like monitoring energy consumption to provide necessary data to any kind of decision algorithm or something like that. Which of these things do we want to focus on? Are there some things that we maybe intentionally don't focus on in the meantime, in the beginning, just to keep things simple and manageable? So do we have a view on that, or is that something we have to work out basically?
Yeah, I completely agree that this is exactly what I was going to raise as well, that we need to agree on the use cases for which we're trying to achieve energy efficiency, because this could be very different if it's for net zero goals that would involve scope 1, 2, 3 carbon reporting. So the energy metrics would be converted to carbon emissions data, and that's a different use case to needing energy metrics for energy metrics in themselves in joules, for example, to report on that, versus energy metrics so that we can reduce the energy consumption or do optimizations and compare before and after, which might not require energy metrics per se. Sometimes CPU utilization can be proxy metric for that. So I think it's going back to Alexis' point and also what Tim said, that we need specific goals, like use cases for which for what we're trying to achieve here, and then the tools follow from that and the implementation as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think the objectives that are listed on this slide are too high level, and we should really try to address the technical objectives, as is already mentioned here in this forum, like trying to find out what are the technical problems, should be the objectives, and also what are the tools that we will be looking into. So I think we definitely need to devise the goals and have clear, bit more technical objectives stated here rather than high level ones.
I think, yeah, absolutely. I think we are starting with, providing a direction for this one. Then the next step would be is to go into the details of each of the points that you have raised. And one question to Guillaume is that from the work group 1, in terms of the stack definition, should we take that one as the reference in terms of the scope for this work group on the coverage on what are the hardware, software, as well as the typical workloads, applications that we would like to consider?
Yes, definitely there's a strong interlock between what will be achieved in this work group and what will be implemented in the telco cloud stack, but also in the validation center, because in the validation center, for example, if we choose a mechanism to measure the energy consumption of one CNF, I think there's a lovely place to test it is in the validation center. So definitely we need to have strong interlock with work group 1 and work group 2, development of the stack and validation center.
Sure. Then I will reach out offline to you, Guillaume, to take a quick update on the current status of work group 1, because I not necessarily participate, but many of you. So then we can use that one as the baseline for the scope of work group 4. And the second question is that, there are many things that the current plans, be it in the customers in Europe or in Middle East, as well as in other areas. But so for mainly for Europe, then we have been doing a lot of work this year in terms of energy consumption, not only from the hardware software perspective, but also from the spectrum aspects as well. I mean, how the use cases will kind of help for the same architecture to consume more or less of energy.
Yeah, so spectrum, I think is out of scope. It's my point of view, but we can challenge my point of view. It's out of scope of Sylva. We can have a look on hardware because there's strong interlock between hardware and CAS layer, of course, but definitely spectrum is out of scope.
Sure, that's good point to define the boundaries. Yeah, and that's. Sorry,
so
you're saying something.
One question, pragmatic thing here.
Yeah.
The workloads are eventually the ones that need information about energy consumption. Information about energy consumption comes from the hardware down below. a canonical way of providing information about this to workloads is to essentially include components like a host local message bus into the stack, so that workloads could have access to essentially information that they otherwise wouldn't have access to. Is that one first work item that we could maybe work on in this working group?
I will let the floor to Carlo. He's got a question, but just on the slide 3, Tim, because you want to deep dive. I think I recognize the slide 3 of Sundara. We've already done months ago a first brainstorm when Sylva was in a closed project. So we have definitely some different topic we have in mind, but here is the way with the launch of this work group, is to renew the objective. So I don't know, Sundara, if you can go to slide 3. Yeah. So here it was, it was just an idea. So Carlo, I'm just going to share these ideas, and please come back to your question after. So it was basically a brainstorm. I think we were seven members of the previous closed project of Sylva. We defined some ideas. The first one is first evaluate what is existing on the community, and of course there's this CNCF sustainability work group. We had to see what they've got we can implement. Concerning energy consumption, in fact, Orange is going to open source a solution that allows to measure the consumption on per CNF. So we've got the modelization, which is there's another initiative, Kepler. So we are very close to Kepler. So we didn't care if we are going to Orange solution or Kepler. We just want to have the best solution to have a measurement of the CNF consumption. We want also to leverage on the validation center to test in real usage different vendor of hardware. Prepare energy conformity. It was an idea of Marco from Nokia. This is a topic that he knows well. I'm not at all an expert on this point, so we can come back to Marco if we want to progress on this part. Integrate optimized architectures. So in the Open RAN MOU, which is a European focus on Open RAN, there are some architecture proposed on the CAS layer to optimize the energy consumption. We have also, for example, on this part, we can have some discussion about what can be the lightest architecture at the edge, including Kubernetes. Are we limiting to 3 servers, or can we go to 2 servers or 1 server? So we have to manage resiliency and Kubernetes architecture. And the last one, it was a first idea. It's good to measure, but at the end we need to optimize. So how we can rely on Kubernetes mechanism to adapt needs versus allocated resource. And once again, this topic is also close to the energy efficiency of Open RAN, who definitely define what the SMO, the orchestrator of Open RAN, can ask to the cloud infrastructure to adapt the scale to the workload needs. Okay, so it was just what we had at this stage. So we need to renew these objectives with this work group. So I let the floor to Carlo. Sorry, I was longer.
That's thanks for that. I'll just keep adding some of the comments also here based upon what Alexis has said. One is on the workloads. So that's a definition and use cases. Sorry, go ahead, please.
I have a quick question for Guillaume, if I may.
Just one quick comment, and just to verify if I got correctly some comments, maybe from Riyab or other, I agree with. I think we should have a discussion on general topics and high level, but this discussion, I think, are ongoing also in many other places, and we should try to gather things that are discussed somewhere else and do also some discussion inside Sylva, but I think it would be interesting also to focus on some simple practical case to identify some very simple scenario, but that can be implemented and tested inside Sylva. Some very simple scenario of measurement of some parameters, identifying as parameters interesting to be optimized for the energy efficiency, and see if we can actually measure them, and how we can integrate this measurement inside the code of Sylva, and how to collect data and so on, starting with very simple use cases, but trying to implement them in the stack. I think this would be something I think different from what I'm seeing is done in other groups where the discussion is more on high-level requirements and but not on practical implementations.
Can I just endorse that vision? I think that's a great statement. Thank you.
Yeah, I completely agree that we need to create some kind of specific use case so that we can start getting the energy metrics, so that we're not stuck in paralysis analysis. And I am happy to, actually, we have the CNCF Environmental Sustainability Tag meeting today. And anyone who is interested is welcome to join. It's at 5 p.m. Central European Time. And I'm happy to provide a link afterwards in the chat. If anyone's interested in coming to that meeting to listen, to raise this, I will raise this. I wanted to ask also what the group might need from the tag. In the tag, we do focus more on outreach communications, creating a landscape document at the moment. So that landscape document will contain tools such as Kepler, for example, as well as other tools that we have crowdsourced. And it will be, the aim is to have it ready by the end of February. So that's something that we can, that I can, you know, advocate there, and then bring it back, report back to you guys when it's ready. But also, if you need anything else, for example, there's a lot of representation from Red Hat and Intel. And for example, you mentioned Kepler. For anyone who might not know, Kepler is a tool that is eBPF based, and it's for measuring energy consumption metrics. It's cloud native, so it reports on the energy metrics of a pod, a namespace, a node, etc. So it's really great to get specific metrics for Kubernetes in millijoules. And those metrics can be then converted into carbon emissions if you have the carbon emission rate of the region that the resource is running in. So yeah, that's just from what Guillaume said earlier, my response to that.
Okay, good. Yeah, thank you for that. Carlo, you had a comment? You raised your hand.
No, I already did it.
Okay. Any recommendations from the hardware side? Is Dell, HP, anybody has joined on this one so far? I don't think so. It's important to track some of their views as well on this one because they are going to be a major part of the
We will
hardware.
have Dell and Lenovo and maybe HP, but definitely have a good involvement probability of Dell and Lenovo.
Okay. Should I reach out to anybody specifically, Gayame, just to invite them for this one, or to take an offline feedback on from them? Gayame?
Yeah, sorry, Sandra, can you repeat?
So I said, want to give any specific names so we can just take their feedback offline and then bring them also into this one because they haven't
Yeah.
really proposed any names from their side. So I think
Okay.
we'll have to reach out to them.
Yeah, I'll give you a contact.
Sure. Thank you.
I would
Okay.
like to raise another thing. The Green Software Foundation is currently also trying to create standards, official standards for carbon reporting, which involves energy reporting. And for example, they released this, the software carbon intensity, this has existed for a while now, but they are trying to standardize this officially, and they released this website last week, which has more information about it. So do have a look, have a read if you want, since this is in a few companies, people that I've spoken to, people are trying to create this the SCI, ways to measure SCI as a rate for software. And of course, there's a big implication for the hardware that it runs on. It's very tightly linked. Yes, so in the infrastructure that software runs on.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I think we'll have to just bring the standardization aspect as well because um, uh, some of us follow different standards for this one, for both for the compliance as well as how this has been measured. One is standards compliance, that is okay. But the other one is that how on a stack level or at a solution level the energy is measured, because at the end of the day, that is what going to matter as far as the overall carbon footprint is concerned or the net zero is concerned, how you put the solution in place on the ground. Um, and 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 that is actually kind of precedes what the standards are going to. So it will be important that we see how this compliance to the solution takes place, and specifically on topics like the workloads that Tommy has mentioned earlier, how this translates into real-time environments.
Exactly, because we can, calculate energy consumption of a Kubernetes cluster with Kepler. We can have carbon data through carbon dashboards from cloud providers, or in other ways. There's so many different ways to gather that data, but the SCI project is trying to standardize the measurement, like the calculation as a rate, so that it's kind of the same across, any tech stack that you might be using. And that's going to be really important, so we're not comparing apples to oranges, for example.
Yeah, exactly. So you can share the link, and then also welcome for the others to comment upon any of the standards that they are right now baking as part of their product roadmaps or energy efficiency targets. So it's important to know that what all those goals, and then what all the additional aspects that we are considering as part of it.
And here is Shujun Cai from Epson. I have a question regarding energy efficiency. As we are talking about energy efficiency, do we already have a common definition of the energy efficiency in Sylva project? It's easy to, I mean, not easy, it's obvious that the energy consumption, but if we talk about energy efficiency, there could be multiple definitions.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Shujan. So the energy efficiency at this point in time is more like a relative aspect, right? So we just compare with various topics. So that is one part, and then of course the one of the energy efficiency is always go to the end goal that we are all targeting, or at least the scope 1, 2, 3 of each of the entities are trying to achieve. So that becomes the other part of it, where there is a net neutrality or the carbon, sorry, not neutral, carbon zero, and then carbon net zero footprints are coming into play. So anything that is taking the current state of energy consumption to the future state is what practically is the energy consumption or the energy efficiency definition that we are. But then it is important, it will be good to define anything if you have any specific things in your mind.
Yeah, I understand.
Because at this point in time, we would say, with all the, at least the vendors, be it the operators, so the net zero is the target to achieve, and then some of them have the goals for next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. So what you do to relatively to reach that goal is basically what we put across as the energy measurement mechanism. Okay, I see your comment, Jeremy. I'll take that. Okay. So, and the final point, Marco, do you want to give any briefing on the ESG, or from your side, Gergelis, any points?
Well, okay, so there are many ways to see this and connect to this work group for Sylva. Let's say that ESG team of each company need to know what is the impact of the infrastructure and software application, whatever will be running on the infrastructure. Now we know that software core network, for example, can run on-prem, can run on a public cloud, and so on. So in this discussion, what we should do is to analyze what the ESG team of each company, CSPs, will ask to the technical team to be reported. There are several combinations, as we know. For example, neutral host. The infrastructure may be owned by a tower company, and same equipment may be used by multiple CSPs. So maybe another target to consider, because this will be a request from ESG team of a tower company, for example, is to have the exact consumption of the shared portion of that CSP. So there are several considerations. Then if we talk about energy, this is just an example, we can analyze deeper later. Then still for ESG team, it is important to know what is the impact of the material. So the CLA, the the LCA, the life cycle assessment of the equipment, software, material used into the infrastructure, and so on. So it's a very large discussion. Let's say that we can connect this ESG topic to the comment of Alexis about what makes Sylva attractive, and the energy efficiency and the sustainability of this telco cloud stack connects there. So what makes attractive from energy consumption will be connected to the ESG overall topic. So it's a long discussion. We will analyze during the work group sessions. There is a lot to think about.
Hi, can I comment on that, please?
Yeah, please.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. So my comment is that it's really important to think about different audiences for your message. Actually, Sylva has more than one audience listening and paying attention and making decisions. One audience is developers, ordinary developers building applications inside telcos and software companies and other places. They are interested in technology, tools, GitHub, GitLab, the latest Kubernetes features, etc. They're interested in how easy is it to set up Sylva? How quickly can I do a demo of eBPS monitoring something, or show how I can reduce my energy? How can I get Kepler working? They're interested in questions like that. Second audience is technology decision makers, people who own delivery of cloud platforms and other telco initiatives like 5G rollout. They care about getting it done on time, and they care about meeting the business requirements that have been set by the business. So you speak to them in a slightly different way, and you offer them different things. And finally, you have the C-suite, the executive team. They care about, saving money, making money, and other regulatory and mandatory requirements. From a energy perspective, ESG, net zero is going to be compulsory for many companies around the world in the next few years. And today it may not be a top 10 issue. It may be a top 20 issue, I don't know, but it's going to be a top 3 to 5 issue quite soon for a lot of CIOs and CEOs. And for those people, you need a very simple message they can understand and take to heart. And so you need to think about different voices and different ways of communicating. And that's why it's really important to stay coordinated on this stuff. That's my comment.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Alexis. I mean, certainly this is in the top 5 as far as the priorities are concerned, especially in this, late part of last year itself. I mean, there is a lot of engagements, of course. Some of the colleagues from operator angle, they know about that one. And then from a vendor angle, we all have been working with them. And the primary focus is to cut the energy consumption, because it's all just selling, and then almost like tripled in the last 6 months or so in the European context. So it's absolutely on top, both for the CSPs as well as for the neutral hosts. And that's one of the key discussion also, is that why and then where the assets that are having high carbon footprint, like the towers, the cell sites, and then other energy consuming, almost like 80% of the consumption comes in across. So where they should be ideally put across, because at the end of the day, this goes into the overall perspective as well as sustainability reporting for respective companies. So it's certainly high on the agenda. And then Marco, to your point earlier on this one, so it's also kind of falls between the operators as well as the neutral host, and also the various other models that is kind of evolving. But I think at this point in time, maybe we should just take any of the a typical CSP in Europe, and then what is the ESG construct. So we get a handle on that one from an overall awareness perspective for all of us in this group about what the ESG topics that each telco talk about, and then where the contribution goes into the scope 1, 2, and 3 part of it.
Yeah. So I think, can I just comment? Sorry. I think if you do that, that's great. What you can do is you can ask the marketing department of each telco to go to the press and talk about the importance of this issue, top 3, top 5, and then you have spokespeople who talk about Sylva and net zero. That's quite straightforward. The developer story is straightforward too. I think one of the questions I would love to see an answer to is what is the technical decision maker operator story? And for that, I think what you need is a compelling proof point. Do you have any people supporting Sylva today who are on target for being able to say, we have a working system based on Sylva? I imagine Orange is one of the potential companies for that. Is there anybody else? Because as soon as you have a working system, it becomes lower risk for decision makers to bet on the same tool.
Yeah, and so to your point, I'm not so sure if anybody can join from Deutsche Telekom, but then I think Telecom Italia has been developing a framework to measure this one, because one is this ESG that is more subjective, the way in which everybody looks at, because you cannot apply a single framework to benchmark like you are doing for a network performance or whatever it is. So there is an initiative that's going on right now in the market to bring a framework that can be implemented in a uniform way across operators, across networks, across the developing community that includes the software, etc. So we have a common approach and then similar measurements that keep happening. So I'm not so sure to what extent that has been implemented, or anyone involved may want to comment on that topic. And I know that the operators they do have an internal discussion on this topic. So maybe Gayame or anybody from Telecom Italia, they can comment on that.
Well, from team point of view, we are internally discussing these topics, but we don't have anything clearly implemented. It's something we are discussing. We are following the discussion in different groups, but we don't have a clear implementation or something already ongoing on it.
Okay, got it. Okay, so we have 5 minutes to go, and then I have just captured this points that we have discussed as part of this one. And I hope you are able to see my screen. My request would be is to have further details for this one, specifically on the topics that we spoke about on the scope and then overall network elements, that I will source it from Gayame. Then on the workloads and then definitions and then use cases that Tommy you have just mentioned. And that goes with the incentives for participation from all the vendors as well as the group members on targeting the net zero goals. So the other key points that I have just identified on the use cases as well as the identification of the tool, including the K8 clusters for the energy metrics. So I would suggest that we keep continuing on this one in the next meeting. So I would request both Rehab, Nikki, and then Marco, if you can just take one of these points that we spoke today, and then come back with the view on the tools and standards. Nikki, if that's something that you can cover in the next meeting. Nikki, are you there?
Yeah, for example, what we could do, I've already talked a while ago with Green Software Foundation. At that time, the way they were going to measure the energy consumption was not really decoupled hardware from the software, but nevertheless, because the standardization is important, why we don't in one of the session invite them to talk about their plan, where they are, what's the plan is for standardization and so on. Could be useful to invite them and listen where they are, so we can get an opinion.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic idea, Marco.
Marco, do you have contacts? I can also help with that from the Green Software Foundation.
I've contacted directly the CEO, so
Asim, I think, is it Asim?
yes.
He's co-chair. Yeah. Great, yeah. Yeah, I'm also happy to bring contacts for Kepler from Red Hat and from the CNCF tag from, for example, Intel, and because Intel are doing a lot of, they're also building a lot of tools around resource optimization and tree aware scheduling. So that, and they have, Asim is at Intel, for example, so they're investing heavily in the Green Software Foundation. But one last thing that I think that we should also look at is defining the software and hardware boundaries of the components that we would want the energy metrics on, since that's the first step in the SCI rates calculation, is to define like the unit of measurement. So I think that's something that we want to look at as well. When we talk about energy efficiency, what exactly are we talking about in terms of what to measure?
I think we will just baseline that one. One is based on the inputs that I will get from Gayame on the work group 1 on the hardware so far under consideration, and the CAS layer under consideration, and the applications and workloads. So I would just put it across broadly for topics on that one, and also any of the ISV or any of the standalone application softwares. So those are the 5 topics that we'll have to put it across and identify what are all the elements, and then what are the models, what are the products under consideration right now.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, it makes sense that we would want to work with the other working groups to define the software, etc.
Right.
Maybe another point is that we should analyze Intel and AMD both, because we have to decouple what we do at software layer, for example, for monitoring, that shouldn't be should not have dependencies from the type of chip, because we know for experience that there are different native features from Intel versus AMD, so we should care about this as well.
Okay, agree. So then, Marco, so you will come back on the Green Software Foundation invite, and then Nikki, you will update us on the Intel part. So if need be, then we can have an interim call also when we invite them, separate from the weekly or the calls that we have on regular basis for this.
Yeah,
is it okay,
sounds
Marco?
good.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And
what will be the
sorry.
frequency of the meeting?
Yeah, so that's why I was just about to come on to that topic. So I have just kept at this point in time, the frequency is once in 3 weeks on Thursday, same time that we are doing now. But is this okay, or too frequent, or too long?
I think this is okay. The only thing is that Intel folks are mostly in the US, so the time would have to be later.
Yeah, okay. We'll find out an evening slot for this. So that's what I mentioned. So
it's
if
the same
this slot,
for Dell. Yeah.
yeah, right. So if this slot does not work, then we will have some dedicated sessions with them depending upon their availability in the evening time for Europe.
Okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yep. Okay. Great. If there are no more comments, then I will share the minutes, and then thank you all for the participation. You all have a good week ahead and then weekend.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for
Thank
organizing.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Good
Thank
night.
you. Bye bye.